Again, we're so grateful to have you here. We are the admissions office and we oversee the JD and JD Flex law programs. And we want to do an application overview for you so you have a really, really clear picture of what components are necessary to apply to law programs at Golden Gate University School of Law here in San Francisco. And also, again, answer any burning questions. And we're going to cover a lot of information. We're going to go quickly. Again, we'll also have an opportunity for you to answer questions at a later time. And I will hand this over now to Mateo Jenkins, my colleague in admissions.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to see everybody on here. Thank you again for joining us. And again, as Dean Palafox mentioned, we'll be going over the application components today. Specifically, we'll be going over what is a completed application, LSAT and or a GRE score, which you would submit. We'll be discussing what a CAS report is and what is inside a CAS report. We'll also dive real into letters of recommendations, as well as talk about what a personal statement is. And then we'll go into what is included in a resume. And then also we'll discuss about what an addenda is and if it applies to you as an applicant. So at this time, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Divian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Divian Martinez. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions. I've been at GGU for about 3 years now, and in admissions for 9 years. So I'm happy to answer any questions even after this information session. And I will be going over the application. And what the application entails, it's really the basic information that you would submit to any type of application. So that would be your biographical information, so where you live, your birthday, all that. And then it goes into your educational background. We want to know everywhere that you have attended school, from if you went to community college, your undergraduate degree, or if you have a graduate education. We will also ask for your academic or university action information or criminal convictions, which fit into the character and fitness section of our application, which we will go over in detail a little bit later. And also we will need to know what program you're applying to. So for the JD program, you have the option between the full-time program or the JD Flex. And the JD Flex program, which we will cover in a little bit more detail, is our hybrid program. And where is this application housed? It's housed at the lsac.org, and you may register for an account for free. You can do so even after this presentation. You can kind of go over our application once you create a profile. And I will pass it back over to Dean Palafox.
Thank you. Okay, the big question, the LSAT or the GRE? So as you may have heard, there are quite a few law schools, including Golden Gate, that are now taking the GRE into consideration when applying to law school. At the moment, we still have a requirement for a student to submit a standardized test, but we are expanding our horizons a bit. And so although the LSAT is probably the most popular, the GRE is a test that we will accept. And I want to give you an idea as to how to prepare yourself for each of the tests super quickly. The first thing is, if you have come from a possible background where, in your work or in your prior education, you really never thought you would pursue law school. Perhaps you were on a different trajectory and you were preparing to do a different type of graduate program. You might have already been readying yourself to take something like the GRE or the GRE itself. With that in mind, if you've already done a lot of preparatory work and started to prepare yourself for the GRE, then I think it's perfectly fine for you to go ahead and move forward in taking the GRE as opposed to the LSAT. What the Educational Testing Service, aka ETS, which is the governing body that administers the GRE, has done is actually create a conversion tool for law schools to utilize. So we have a better understanding of what the GRE means in terms of how to review the data that's given to us especially because so many law schools, obviously for years and years, have only ever utilized the LSATs and acceptable standardized tests. So I say that to tell you that we will know how to utilize the GRE in lieu of the LSAT. So if you've already started moving down that pathway, I say stick with it. If you feel comfortable utilizing that to apply to the law schools that accept the GRE. Now, it's up to you to also research all of the law schools that you're applying to make sure that they take that score. Almost half of the law schools now do accept the GRE. If you're going to take the GRE, then I would say don't take the LSAT as well, because the LSAT really is a test that you want to start studying for maybe 8 to 12 months before you actually take it, because it's so time intensive to really pour yourself into studying the different sections as a part of the LSAT, the time requirements, you know, all the different types of analytical components that will be part of the test. I believe there are 4 sections now, including a writing section. They're really preparing yourself for one and then shifting gears to prepare yourself for another. That cannot happen very quickly. It's not an idea of taking it and then, you know, in February, and then I'll just study for the LSAT for March. Like, that's not how that works. The LSAT is actually one which many of you have probably already prepared for and have taken, is something that you have to take a long time to study. If you have already taken the LSAT or you are planning on taking it, it is obviously something that we accept because we have for many years and we will continue to. There are a lot of students who, I'm going to say probably more than 80% of students take some sort of preparatory course to study for the LSAT, because it's not just about what you know, but how to apply it. So a lot of times organizations like, you know, Princeton Review or Kaplan are teaching you how to take the test under timed conditions, how to knock out, you know, the worst answers so that you can create a smaller selection of possible answers for yourself. So it takes a long time. If you haven't started to study for the LSAT yet, what I would encourage you to do is get some of the free practice exams and free resources through the Law School Admissions Council by way of the Khan Academy. That's a free prep for you that you can start with. Hopefully it's something that works well for you and you feel good about the LSAT. I have had a few students who have already taken a GRE and have indicated that they're going to take an LSAT, or they've taken an LSAT and they said they'd like to take the GRE. Most law schools will tell you what I am about to say, and that is, if you take a GRE and an LSAT, regardless of which you took first, we're always going to utilize the LSAT in the review. We'll take the GRE into consideration, but the reporting standards, according to the ABA currently, require us to report the LSAT, regardless if you have 2 different exams. So that's why I want you to think carefully about which test you take. And if you take the GRE first, then think about what your score is, what it could mean, make an appointment with someone in the admissions office, and then we can try to give you some advice before you make the next step in taking the LSAT. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of information there. Before we move on, I don't know if there were any questions that I need to answer about that. So I'm just going to check really quick here.
I
think
have
we're
a
okay for now.
Uh,
Oh, is it about the LSAT?
Yes. So just so that I'm clear, you do not have to take both. You can choose to take the LSAT or the GRE.
Correct.
You don't have to.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll answer more. Thank you for your question. That's a great question. I don't see anything else in the chat, so I'm going to hand it off to my next colleague for our next section.
Thank you, Dean Palafox. So we're going to talk about the CAS report. And we've mentioned already a few times about LSAC, and they're the ones that they create this CAS report, which stands for Credential Assembly Service. So this is a way that simplifies the law school application process for both the candidates and law schools. So it connects, makes it a lot easier in terms of getting the information from the applicants to the law schools that you're wanting to apply to. With the CAS, what's included it would be your transcripts, letters of recommendation, and any other documents required for each of your law school applications. And they would be sent only to, they'd only be sent to LSAC only one time. Now, in terms of this service, it is a subscription and you would pay once and it would be active for up to 5 years. And the price is around $195. So you would pay for this. And then anytime you would want to apply to a law school, you would pay a report fee, which would be $45 for each law school that you are applying to. So definitely keep in mind of those costs as well. And really the benefit also of this CAS report is LSAC is doing the authentication and valuation of the transcripts, the processing of the letters of recommendation, and the electronic processing of the applications of the law school. So they really provide a big valuable service for the applicant and simplifying things to getting that information to the law schools. So, keep in mind for you to get these CAS reports, go ahead and create your LSAC account, and then make sure you send all your transcripts, and then send all your letters of recommendation, and then pay the required CAS fees as I mentioned. So that would be what the CAS report is. So I'm going to pass this on to my colleague, Shannon.
Thank you, Mateo. And so as Mateo mentioned, the letters of recommendation will be a piece that you will submit through the Credential Assembly Services with LSAC. For GGU law requirements in terms of letters of recommendation, we require a minimum of 1 letter of recommendation to a maximum of 4 letters of recommendation. You can choose how many within that band you decide to submit. And everybody will approach this when people are reviewing their applications. They're going to approach it a little bit differently in terms of what they may like to see. I will tell you, for me personally, if possible, I really do prefer to see at least 2 letters of recommendation. You're applying to law school, well, 1 is the minimum. I really would like to see folks, when they submit their law school application, submit more than the minimum requirements for documentation. In terms of your letters of recommendation, who can they come from? We really want them to come from folks who know you well. We'd like them to come from professors. We would like them to come from perhaps supervisors in your professional work setting. We would like them to come from folks who you may have worked with in a community setting, a community leadership setting. So those are going to be the ideal folks who are going to write your letters of recommendation. And I will say that this is true at GGU Law. I've heard it from many of our law admission colleagues. We really discourage any letters of recommendation from your family members, from your friends, or from friends of your family who maybe have known you for a decade or 2 decades. We appreciate the importance of the relationship they have with you, and we respect how well they know and can likely speak to you. But they're going to speak to your skill sets and your strengths from a familial or a friendship base, and that should be a very generous base of recommendation. And so we're really going to encourage you to submit from individuals who can speak more to your professional skill set or your academic skill set. And that is just a quick hit on the letters of recommendation. We can answer more questions as we move into the question section a little bit later. And I will turn it back over to my colleague Mateo to talk a little bit about the personal statement.
Thank you, Shannon. So in terms of your personal statement, it's exactly what it says. It is coming from you. It's not coming from your partner. It's not coming from your child. It's not coming from your dog. It is all about you, writing about who you are, and why do you want to go to law school, and what is pushing you, and what is influencing you and motivating you to go to law school. So in terms of things to think about the personal statement, you have to really think about this personal statement is like an interview that you're having, and it's going to be like with the admissions committee. So things to keep in mind about the personal statement: following instructions, really, if they're asking specific questions, then answer those to what they're asking for. Why do you want to attend law school? We want to know what is driving you to go to law school. We want to know, is it something in the past that really said, you know what, I felt an injustice. I want to go to law school because I want to change what is going on in the world right now. Because really, change happens one person at a time, right? Identify characteristics and skills that would make you a good law student and future attorney. Are you going to bring your voice to the classroom? Are you going to be that attorney that is really going to make waves in changing, what is happening in the world that is wrong or is not, it's not what we want to see. You want to make a positive change. Who are you? What's your story? It's great when we see personal statements and you're talking about, something that may have happened to, your husband or wife or partner or a mother or father or a friend, and that helps influence you a little bit. But ultimately, by the time you write the personal statement, you want to see there that it's really reflective of who you are and what are the reasons why you want to go to law school. And again, always highlighting the ability to adapt to challenges. And those challenges can be anywhere with, if you experience something in your family, or if you had, something that occurred, when you were in your undergrad, or you owned your own business. There's all kinds of ways that you can send your message and your personal statement in terms of why you want to go to law school. And always, 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 when you're doing your personal statement at the end, make sure you state that you are the one that wrote this. You received no help in creating this, and that you're signing off on this, because that really makes it official that this personal statement is truly yours. So that's just a little bit something about the personal statement, and I'm going to shoot it back to Shannon.
Perfect. Thank you, Mateo. So the next component of your application is going to be the resume. And believe it or not, this is something that we really do look at closely. When I'm reviewing applications, I find it incredibly helpful. That may be because in between two different law school admission jobs, I worked as a professional recruiter, assisting corporations across industries hire for their business teams. And so resumes have just become a part of my professional world for over a decade now. And I find the information on the resume really helpful. What we are looking for on your resume, we want to make sure that you list your educational background. We want to understand the undergraduate background that you have, the school you attended, the degree you received, when you graduated is always incredibly helpful when we're trying to check facts back and forth between documents. You can also include any honors that you received during your educational experience, be it undergrad or at the graduate level, any certificates you've completed that may be outside of a higher education environment, but are still professionally relevant and built your skill set, like different Google or tech certificates, and also any licenses that you may have in the professional world. Perhaps you're licensed to work within the insurance industry, perhaps you're a licensed real estate agent. That is information that, again, it shows us the skill sets that you've built in your life experience, and those are skill sets that can often translate and be incredibly helpful in the law school academic experience. We'd also like to see your professional history. Maybe you're coming straight out of undergrad into law school. I still really want to see, did you work while you were in your undergraduate curriculum? It helps me to see, maybe you didn't get a 4.0 in undergrad, maybe you trended around that 3.1 mark, but you were working full time because you had significant financial obligations and you had to balance bringing in an income while pursuing your undergraduate education. That's information that's very relevant to me. It tells me that you had to learn time management skills, how to prioritize balancing business expectations with academic expectations. But that information is incredibly helpful. Perhaps you graduated 10 years ago and you're now applying to law school and you've accrued significant professional experience in that time frame. It's really helpful for us to see what your career trajectory has looked like. Again, what skill sets have you developed during that professional experience that we know will likely really be helpful during the challenges and the rigorous law school education that you're hoping to begin with GGU Law. And then finally, community service or community leadership activities for which you were not compensated. If you were involved working with nonprofits, perhaps you served in a volunteer capacity with a local government entity. These, again, are all things that show that you have significant obligations on your plate. You're balancing your priorities. You're learning those really critical time management skills. And it also will show us, for example, if you're applying for our public interest scholarship, it helps us to really take a look and see Where were you working in the community? What types of issues really spoke to you? And again, what type of involvement did you have that really elevated your skill set while also giving back to really important community issues? So that resume can often be an overlooked piece, but I do want to emphasize that it's something that is really important to pay attention to and to make sure that you put your best foot forward with that resume in the application process. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Vivian, and she will cover the addenda information for us.
Hello again, and I will cover the all-important character and fitness section within the addenda slide. So in your application, we ask, and all law schools will ask this, for a character and fitness question, you will have to answer multiple questions. So for us, there's 4, in terms of either if you had academic issues or action on your transcript, or if there was a criminal action on your record. And if you reply to any of those questions with a yes, you will have to submit an addenda describing to us, what happened, what the situation was around any of those, issues that you had, either within your schooling or personal life. The important part about the character and fitness section is that you want to make sure that it's all completely there, it's clear, and that you have disclosed it, not only for us to, have that information on hand, to really get a thorough photo of who you are, but also because, once you graduate from law school, you will have to submit these questions that you answer to the state bar. And so you don't want to have any type of discrepancies from your application to law school to when you graduate and then apply for the state bar. There's also other types of addenda that are optional. We strongly encourage you at GGU to submit either an LSAT score, just addressing disparities within your LSAT score or GPA performance at your school. Again, because we don't do in-person interviews, this application is your interview. So any information that you feel like the committee should consider, maybe there was one semester where you had a family member who was sick and, maybe you didn't perform as well that semester, anything like that can give us a little bit of background on, on your transcript would be helpful for us. And it would be better for you, so that we're not guessing what happened during that time period. Again, this is all optional. We want you to keep it, if you can, concise, short, so that makes it easier for us to read, but also take that space to provide that information to us. And I will go over to Shannon.
Perfect. And so often we get so many questions about the timeline for application review and the deadlines, which are a really important part of the process. And you'll see that our deadlines were a little bit later than perhaps some of the other schools you may be applying to. Our priority deadline is April 15th. So April 15th is really that ideal time frame in which getting everything in, you've now given us the time that we need to review all of your application materials and make an admission decision in a timelier fashion so that you have more time to make the decision about where you are going to attend law school and to begin to lay the foundation for your transition into the law school and to be successful in that transition. We do recognize that sometimes things don't line up in a priority fashion. And so we have a final deadline of June 15th for our applications. If folks apply around that deadline, we do everything we can to get the application read and a decision made in a timely fashion. But I really, if at all possible, would like to discourage waiting until that late date because it puts you ultimately at the disadvantage if you do receive an admission offer, because it will take us time to compile your application. It will take us time to read through your application, make a final admission decision, and you may now literally have 2 to 3 weeks to decide that you would like to come to GGU and to make that happen and make that transition into the law school. So the priority deadline of April 15th is really the one that, if possible, if circumstances align, I really encourage all of you to meet that date ultimately for your benefit in the decision-making process and the preparation for transition to law school. And with that, I will turn it over to Dean Palafox, who will briefly talk about scholarships at GGU Law.
Thank you so much, Shannon. You would think briefly would not be the key word here, but I do want to talk about a really, it is kind of brief, but this is really exciting for us. We recently went through a really phenomenal law school transformation. If you don't know a lot about Golden Gate, we were founded in 1901. We're a school of opportunity and helping to educate community leaders. And so essentially what that means is we're really committed to students of all different backgrounds, but a large community of ours identifies as first generation, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, military. They come from different states, different countries. I mean, really have a great mix of students. But the cost of legal education has skyrocketed. I've been in law admissions for maybe 12 and a half years, and higher education for over 20. And the cost, as you know, as you do your research, is pretty significant. So as you're making decisions about where you'd like to invest your time and your money, then this becomes a crucial topic. So at Golden Gate last year in the fall, we launched a tuition-free program for the full-time day class. So continuing on to fall 23, if you are admitted into the full-time day class, then you're guaranteed 100% presidential scholarship, which covers your tuition for the 3 years in law school. Students who apply for the JD Flex program, which is part-time, that's a bit of a different program. We do also have presidential awards for that program, but because many of the students are coming from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, they may be currently employed locally, or they're going to fly in, or they have a certain, whatever their backgrounds are, they tend to be working professionals. So that therefore, our scholarship tier works a little differently. Last year, we were able to give out either 100% or 50% scholarships, but that flex program has become increasingly popular. So I'm not sure how that exactly will end up because of the increase in applications, but we do offer presidential scholarships to the flex students as well. Because the JD Day program does require students to abandon all, if you will. You're not working while you're in law school, especially not the first year. It really is an awful lot to take on, especially given the cost of living in San Francisco. Although the economy is zigging and zagging, what we know is that it's still expensive to live here. We all know that almost all of us have moved up here to experience what it's like to pay what we pay in rent. So again, with our commitment to making sure we diversify the legal profession, our solution for now was to help by providing these free scholarships. So again, that's why we're really giving you ideas to focus on, areas to focus on, to make sure you take your application as seriously as possible, because it's not only about gaining admission to a law school, but potentially being $150,000 without debt in that range, because law school is so expensive. So in addition to those scholarships, I still always encourage students to use scholarships.com, for example, or Scholly.com is an app that you can use. And essentially what that does is it allows you to see monthly scholarship opportunities in which you can apply, get $200, $500, $1,000. I always hear Vivian giving advice to students, or Shannon or Mateo saying $200 could be a book that you don't have to pay for. Some scholarship organizations, I used to work for one, will actually send the money to you as opposed to the school. So if you needed to buy a ticket home, if you needed to buy a new computer, then those are funds that you can utilize that are independent of whatever a law school may give you. In this case, at Golden Gate, that full tuition scholarship. So I would say apply now, as our classes change, hopefully we'll be able to retain the scholarship. But again, we know based on the economic downturn, this is something we want to keep for as long as we can. So again, I encourage you to apply. And that's a little bit about scholarships. And we'll also, I will turn, oh wait, I'm gonna turn it back over to myself now. And this is the opportunity. First, let me just scan the chat because this is an opportunity for you to ask your questions of us, to really dig deep and figure out what the ins and outs are from the admissions team. So let me just look super quickly here. For our process, there's a question being asked if we apply for scholarships after the review process. For our application, you don't need to submit additional materials or an additional application. But if you're applying to different law schools, they do sometimes require that you submit different elements for an application that's separate or as part of that application. So you really have to look at the rules and directions of that school. And the scholarships that I mentioned, so scholarships.com is probably the most commonly utilized. FastWeb is another, but I had mentioned an app called Scholly, and I think it's a derivative of scholarships.com, so like something fast on your phone. Yes, Jesus, everyone who is going to be admitted to the day program this year is getting a full tuition scholarship. I don't know. Someone's asking about whether or not we need physical books or can we use ebooks. Mateo, might you know that?
It really is dependent on the instructor. I believe at least your first year law courses, they're all books, because I see all the students carrying wheelie backpacks because they have all their books in there. Because after the first week of you being super excited to be a law student, it's going to get really old carrying those books on your back. So I believe the books are definitely hardback in the beginning, but as you further progress, depending on the professor and the upper classes, I do believe that some books can be electronic.
Hey, that's good news. I see some hands up, but let me just get through these a couple more chat questions before I ask you to unmute yourself. Shannon, we have a question here asking if we're an ABA accredited program and whether or not it's in person or an online program.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, we are an ABA accredited program, both for our full-time daytime program, as well as our hybrid JD Flex program. And the hybrid JD Flex program really is geared towards individuals who have other life obligations and yet still want to pursue law school. So I saw a question about people who work full-time and if we have a program geared towards them, and the answer would be yes. That is our JD Flex program. It was built specifically with working individuals in mind. And for the format of the JD Flex program, as I said, it's a hybrid program. And what that means is 8 weekends per semester in fall semester and spring semester. You are required to be in San Francisco on the GGU campus, and your coursework is delivered in person, and you are able to build that network of support in person with your classmates and colleagues in the Flex program. And then when you are not on campus for those 8 weekends per semester, the coursework is delivered asynchronously online so that you are able to do it on your own time as you manage all of the other obligations in your day-to-day life. So I hope that covered it, but if not, let me know what else I can add. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. The first person I see with their hand up is Jacob. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your questions?
Yeah, thank you. So I kind of have a couple of questions, and I'm wondering maybe if it wouldn't be more appropriate to contact the admissions office during regular business hours.
Sure. Yeah, if it up to you, if what you feel comfortable asking, we are happy to set up an appointment with you individually, any of you.
Awesome. Well, I will ask one question. So I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So if for every student that is admitted into the daytime, the full-time JD day program is automatically awarded a presidential scholarship, which covers full tuition. Do I have that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then my second part to that is, if you're sort of going between the Flex program and the daytime program, are you able to submit two applications, or can you submit one and then, if you're admitted, discuss your options with the admissions office about, going between the flex and also the full-time program, or is it one or the other? You have to commit.
That's a really good question. Well, if you apply for one program, gain admission, and then change your mind, let's say your work is not going to allow you to travel on the weekends, or and you say, forget it, I'll do the full-time program, or you decide, hey, I want to keep my job and do the part-time program, then you would send an email to me, actually, so we could have a discussion about you switching your program prior to enrollment. But there are sometimes students that start in one program and then circumstances change, and then they want to kind of internally transfer from the current program to the other program. And then during that time, if you're currently enrolled, you would work with the dean of students to do that. It really doesn't necessarily impact scholarship as an incoming, like an admitted student. But those are conversations that we can have.
Okay, awesome. I'm so sorry to everybody that's on this panel that has questions. I have one more follow-up to that. So for the folks who get admitted to the daytime program and they get the full scholarship, how is the decision made when someone's applying to the flex in terms of scholarship? Are the merit scholarships a little bit more rigid in terms of your GPA and LSAT? So how does that work? If you were to get admitted into the daytime program, but then decide, I actually want to do the flex, how would that affect any potential scholarships that you could receive?
It really depends. It really depends. There's no formulaic answer to provide. Like if you get admitted to the full-time day program and you get the scholarship and you decide to move over to flex, then I don't really see there being an issue necessarily. And I'm not really sure that would be let's say you get, or if you get a presidential for either one, then I don't really think it's an issue. We've always offered presidential scholarships for many years, and we always will offer presidential scholarships. We're just fortunate to be in a position right now to be able to offer them for the entire day class. And again, because the flex program is structured differently, the student need, if you will, is a little bit different because almost 100% of the students in flex are currently working and going to law school. So it's just a different structured program. But if a student were to get a smaller scholarship in flex and want to move over to the day program, then obviously we'd want to work with them to figure out how to, make that happen. But I haven't run into that quite yet. So it really kind of depends. Since we just started this program now, I think we'd have to take time to have those discussions. But, and you're not saying this, so I'm going to say, I think that if a student wants to get into the day program so that they can get the scholarship and then use it for a different program, you're kind of looking at it wrong because, all of the responsibilities you're taking on as a flex student, it's a less flexible program if you think about it. You have to organize your time in such a way that you're getting through all your family life, work life, travel, study, coming to class, and then rinse, repeat, right? Every 2 weeks, you're coming to campus. So it's actually just a differently structured program, which is part of the consideration. But we don't have hard cutoffs. We still have a holistic review process, which is very important. The average age of our students this year is 31. You won't find that anywhere else. I think the highest I've heard of is maybe 27. So we have working professionals who, and we have younger students too, but it's just a different kind of atmosphere. But please, let's set up appointments to chat with you further about additional questions. I see Shukimba would like to ask another question as well.
Thank you so much, Paulette. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. So I have just a few questions. The first question is, what are the hours of the full-time program?
I will bounce that to Mateo.
So in terms of the hours of the full-time program, a typical schedule for the first year in the full-time program, I would say is roughly Monday through Friday. Really Monday through Thursday, you'll have a class in the morning. you'll have a community period, which is 12 to 1, and then you'll have a class in the afternoon. That's typically Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, you may have a class in the morning or a class in the afternoon, and that could be an elective or a writing and research class. So that would be basically for your fall and spring.
Okay, and when we say morning, is that 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
Typically, I think the classes go like 10:15 to 11:30. Back in the day, they would be earlier, but usually it's like a 10:15 to 11:30 or 12 o'clock. And then there's a 1 hour community period that we call. And then classes resume again like 1:15 to 2:30 or 1:15 to 3. So depending on how many credit hours that course is and how much time they're required to meet for that course.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Another question is for the application process. I know we spoke of making sure that, you know, all of the schools that we went to is included in that resume or curricula vitae. What about let's say a junior college or college you went to, you didn't graduate, you just kind of like went and then you graduated from 2 different colleges. Do you literally put all of those colleges on your resume or just the ones that you've graduated from? Let's say if you went to a junior college and went to one more college, but you didn't graduate and you went to grad school at one place, you graduated, and then went to graduate school, you graduated.
Sure. Maybe I'll just jump in and say on the resume, you don't have to list all of them. You can put the degree granting institution, because on the credential assembly report, you'll list all the schools and then they'll require you to send in the transcripts anyway. So we'll see them anyway. So you don't have to add them there.
Okay, perfect. Last question.
Sure.
The June 15th deadline. Let's just say I missed that deadline. Then do I have to wait until the next year, or do you have do you guys offer like another deadline, let's say halfway through the year, September or October?
I'll have Vivian answer that one.
So we might accept applications after that timeline, but you know, we usually give students warnings after that because it may take up to 4 to 6 weeks to still review your file, or you know, you have to be at orientation by the 1st or 2nd week of school in August. So in order to determine your move here, if you have to move here, kind of settle things out, we always recommend you apply earlier just for that reason. But that's not saying it's not doable, but it's very rare that we do admit people after or accept applications after that June 15 deadline. But you can always contact us if that's the case for you, and we can work with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I see Jeevan. I hope I said your name correctly.
Yes, you did. That's correct. Just a question actually regarding, so this is actually regarding preparing for the bar exam. Do you guys, as part of the program, is there any type of component that kind of helps the student prepare for the bar exam after, or gets them ready, or gets them, you know, prepared and kind of thinking in that manner so they can get to that right after they finish law school here?
Yeah, really glad you asked that question, and I will take it because I love that we have gosh, since maybe 2018, a partnership with an organization called Themis. And I'll put the link in right after I chat. Themis is free bar prep for every student that comes to Golden Gate. And it's, you know, similar to Barbary, except for you have to pay like $5,000 or $6,000 for the Barbary class, where Themis is already built into the tuition model, which obviously if you come to school here, then you're probably paying reduced tuition or have free tuition. So it's a free 6-week program that you get between graduation and prior to the bar. Most of our students, when they graduate in May, have that 6 weeks. So that's a free option for you. Our statistics are really great with that. Students who finish at least 75% of the course usually pass it at 75% rate the first time. And so here's the thing, take the course. And I think sometimes people get, you know, lost in thought about what direction they should go because their friends said they used a private tutor or they use these other elements. And so we're telling you, we know what works and it's free, so don't pay for it. The other part of Themis, which is really great for us, is for 13 of your doctrinal courses while you're at Golden Gate, Themis has prepared additional academic resources that you can access through a portal through Themis. So once you decide you're going to matriculate to our law school, we send your information to Themis, and then they create a login for you. And what you can do is, for the most part, every class that you take in law school, the grade that you receive is the final grade. The final grade is the test grade that you take at the end of the year. And so all the work that you've done for the whole semester is reliant upon that final test grade. So what the Themis portal does is it gives you like these assessments throughout the year to answer questions, let's say with regard to torts. How am I doing? Okay, I'm going to take this assessment on torts through Themis, and I'm doing okay. Maybe I can study better, or I'm doing really well, or what have you. So it gives you an idea of how well you're doing in those courses. As well, it gives you access to different types of outlines and academic resources, independent of our academic services.
Oh, I think not that way.
Oops, I'm gonna mute you. So so anyway, I appreciate you asking that question. Those are no additional cost to the student either. It's just creating an organized chart for yourself as to when you're going to do what. I think that's the other thing that's really important, is understanding how to utilize your time best in reviewing, learning how to learn the material, outlining, and then using these academic resources.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Is this course only kind of designed for the California bar exam, or if someone wanted to take the bar exam in Arizona or Oregon, is this applicable as well?
Yes, it is. And we have quite a, well, I don't know how many students. It was a good percentage of students that took a bar outside of California this last year. So yes, you can, and you let them know, the bar services team, independently, where you're thinking about taking the test, so they can help you prepare for that particular exam.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. I see Sasha next. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, good evening. Apologize for the noise. I'm here in New York at 9:20 p.m. Thank you so much for taking the time to, answer all of our questions. Actually, I have a couple. One is about housing. Do you guys offer any housing opportunities to students?
I'm going to have Shannon answer that, because she is the writer of our housing resources guide.
Excellent question. Thank you so much, Sasha. In terms of housing, we are not a residential campus, and so we do not offer housing for our students. When we offer admission to students, we do provide a couple of different resources to help students navigate Bay Area housing. We will have an admitted student guide that talks about some of the different programs at GGU Law, the steps to enroll, and then we will have an overview of some of the most popular neighborhoods that our students choose to live within, both in San Francisco, and we do have a good number of students who will choose to live in the East Bay or the South Bay areas and use BART to commute into the city on a daily basis. And so that housing guide will really help you to start to understand the different neighborhoods, the price points, the proximity to campus, what may be the best fit for you. And then we will also have a private group for our admitted students, where number one, you all can start connecting with one another and build relationships online before you arrive on campus. And then we will also have some of our current law students who are a part of that group, who can help answer questions about housing, who can talk a little bit about their experience finding housing either in the city or just outside of the city. So while we don't have residential facilities on our campus, we will work to help navigate the really important questions and the processes about landing in housing that is a comfortable, good base for you, particularly during that first year of law school as you're getting to know the Bay Area.
Okay, thank you so much. That answers the question. And also I wanted to ask about grading. Is the grading dependent kind of in comparison to other students?
That's a really great question. And if Mateo is available, Mateo worked on supporting the academic side of the house for a number of years at GGU Law. So I would love to bring his expertise in to answer that question.
So, I can't fully answer that. There are some things I definitely did not want to touch, and that was the grading, because that does go through student services. But yes, I do believe they have they have curves, and it really depends on the each individual instructor. But definitely, if you want to email us when we get the email address at the end and reach out, I definitely can answer more questions or get connected more to student affairs on that for you, Sasha.
Okay, thank you so much.
I see Ray has their hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Dean Paulette, I have a unique situation where I have a low LGPA and a low LSAT score. It improved, but it's still not up to snuff, so to speak. You still encourage me to apply. I am a single dad, so I don't have the ability to do what traditional students do, but I am interested. And also, when I have been applying to law schools, I've been asking the admissions committee to look at my graduate school GPA to see that there was an improvement and a change because uh, in undergrad, I was completely unfocused, didn't know how to study, and I pledged 2 fraternities. So I'm just being honest because you got to tell y'all anyway to get admitted to the bar. You got to tell everything. So so that's my unique situation. I'm in the DMV, so I mean there are a number of law schools here, but it's way more competitive. It costs a ton more money, you know, to get into Georgetown and GW here in American. So yeah, that's my question.
I appreciate that question and honesty because I'm pretty sure there are quite a few students that might have maybe not exactly similar, but you know, they have circumstances in which they maybe took the LSAT for the first time without prepping, or maybe standardized tests have always been a little bit of a hurdle, or they transferred schools, or any of those circumstances that make them somewhat similar, and perhaps they may have slightly lower metrics than what we publish. This year, our median LSAT was a 154 and our median GPA was a 3.2, but we definitely had students that you will hear called splitters, if you will. And essentially, sometimes they have had, you know, maybe not the greatest start at the beginning, but then did well at at the end of their bachelor's program, or had a lot of work experience, pursued a graduate degree, did really, really well. And then, you know, we're looking at that holistically.
With regard to that, Dean, I believe there was a decision that came down recently about the LSAT being optional. And they're doing this to give people of color, students of color, more opportunities in the legal profession. Is that something that the GGU is looking at or has elected to implement? Are you also accepting GMAT scores, GRE scores? What other factors are you taking life events into account as well? Because you know when you put your information into LSAC, your GPA is one thing on your transcript, but they recalculate your GPA.
I know.
And that's what they give the law schools. And it's like, wait a minute.
I know. I've been doing this for a long
what
time.
I earned.
I know. I've been doing this for a long time. Briefly, what I'll say is let's set up a one-on-one appointment with you, because I think that anybody that finds himself in a circumstance of wanting to graduate in a law program will, you know, overall across the board in the US, applications are slightly down, but at GGU, they're a little bit up. So it's a little bit more competitive for us. And I think one of the ways that we've been able to help students is with the creation of a new master's in law studies program, which gives students an opportunity to, one, if they don't want to be take the bar and they want to utilize their law education for use in human resources or compliance or negotiations or whatever they want to do, but they don't want to take the bar. This is an alternate way of doing that. And in a way is kind of like a pre-law. So what we do is if students are taking the MLS program, they graduate and they have a strong GPA, then that's an additional component we weigh very heavily because you're taking courses with law professors and their doctrinal courses. So you are learning the law in a different structure because it's a master's program. So let's meet with you to talk to you about that program. And I have 3 more questions, and we might actually go over 5 minutes. So if anyone has to leave, I understand, but I see 3 hands. So we're going to say Obina, and then Olamide, and then Marjani. And then after that, we're going to have everyone email us with additional questions. So Obi, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking my question. So currently I'm a practicing pharmacist, and I've also got a master's level degree as well as an undergraduate degree. So slightly different as far as the applicant for typical law schools. My understanding is as a law school applicant or going through the LSAC site, a lot of law schools, the 2 metrics they look at are undergrad GPA as well as LSAT score. I also have military experience as well as a business owner, et cetera. And so just from a life perspective, I know all those things can be reflected in other places in your application, but as far as just filtering and getting your foot into the door, the 2 metrics being used, undergrad GPA and LSAT score, is there any way, not necessarily to circumvent that, but is there any way to, when you're at least applying, that these other things that you could also showcase might help offset just how that might filter you out from the running, if you will, before any additional looks or further review of your application is done?
I appreciate that, and I'll actually answer. First of all, thank you for your service. And all of your hard work, you've done a lot of stuff. I want to help you reframe a little bit, because the LSAT and the GPA medians are not what schools, not what GGU looks for as minimums or cutoffs and the only thing we look at. Now, you should ask this question of every law school, which you'll probably get a similar answer, but the reframing is the American Bar Association, when we report numbers, has required us to report medians. And so that's different than the type of student that will admit to our law schools. I had mentioned earlier, the average age for our students this year is 31, which means they come with a lot more experience, a lot more education, and a lot more readiness for the rigors of law school. So we are looking for applicants like you who say, well, the BA, maybe your bachelor's degree GPA, as an example, might not be your case, because if you're a pharmacist, that means that you have to have a master's degree and probably very hard area. But it's possible you were a bio major, for example, or a chemistry major, and those students may have lower GPAs because the curves are low. It's just a different grading platform. So with that, we can't say, oh, well, they have a 2.9, never mind, but it's a 2.9 in biochemistry. So really context matters in your application, what you studied, what your experiences were, how you supplemented your education, what other, experiences you had that you were juggling in school, after school, and where you're at now as you prepare to go to law school. So I want you to reframe a little bit, because those are not hard cutoffs, at least not at GGU. And our mission, we're very driven to help educate those who are prepared and ready for law school. Now, it's not to say that the LSAT and the GPA, for example, or the GRE cannot give us insight into analytical components that are helpful and give us better ways to assess whether or not you'd be able to be successful in law school. That's what we have to do. We have to be able to give you the benefit and make sure that you're going to be successful. We don't want anyone to go to law school at our law school who we said, well, we're going to give them a chance, but all of the indicators, every single one of them said that they may not be ready, because that's a disservice to you, right? So with that being said, I really do encourage you to set up an appointment with us one-on-one to talk more about your individual circumstances, because we have many students like you who, we have one student in our class that has a PhD. So there are people coming from various backgrounds who are successful in law school. And again, that trajectory sort of is different for everyone. Thank you for your question. Olamide, I hope I said your name right. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, my name's Olamide.
Thank you.
I actually have two really brief questions. The first one is, if you take the LSAT multiple times, I know it says they're gonna look at your highest score. However, I know that they can see both your scores if you approved one the first time. Does that affect anything, especially if you had like a boost? Because I've taken LSAT 3 times and I finally got this close enough score, but I don't know if that affects anything in my thing because there's like a significant boost in my LSATs.
Can I take that one, Dean Palafox?
Oh, yes, please, please, please.
Thank you. I have just had my head buried in applications for the last few weeks. And so I've seen a lot of this, and I am so grateful that you asked this question. If you have a significant jump up in your LSAT score or a decline in your LSAT score, we really strongly recommend that you submit an addendum with your application. And I'll tell you specifically what we're looking for is with that significant increase that you experienced, we want to know what are the factors behind that increase. Did you prepare for it differently? Did you perhaps the first 2 times there were some things going on that distracted you and you were able to focus more this time? But we really want to understand why a score decreased or increased, because for us, that is going to be information that's really important in our decision-making process. So we can then determine which of those scores is actually the best predictor of your academic success in law school. And I've had a couple of applications in the last few weeks where there have been significant score differences and no context was provided. And I couldn't move forward with that application. I had to reach out to the applicant to request the addendum because our admissions committee was not comfortable making a decision without that additional context from the applicants. And so anytime there's a difference in those scores, please, please, please send us an addendum and tell us what those differences were so that we are positioned to make a really good admissions decision on your behalf. And thank you for letting me answer that, Dean Palafox, and I hope that answer was helpful.
Yes,
Perfect.
it was. I already turned in like an addendum for my first 2 because I also had to turn in an academic addendum. I don't know if I have to turn in a second one for the most recent one because that was where I had my score jump.
Yes, please do. And so in those situations where something comes to light after you've submitted all your application documents, even if you've already submitted an addendum, but something switches and there's new information, then please email a updated addendum to lawadmissions@ggu.edu, and we will upload it to your file so the individuals who review it will have that new information and that new context. And they'll look at both addendums, but they're really going to want to have the most recent one with that contextual information for the increase.
Okay, and my final question is if you have an advancement in your GPA, like from freshman year all the way to graduation, do they look at that, like the advancement in your GPA, or is that just insignificant because you have a CGPA?
No, it's a great question, and we absolutely look at that. And so if somebody has, there are different situations in which I'll do this, but some of the things I do look closely at, and I note for myself and for other folks who may be reviewing the file that I'm reading, I actually will include GPA trend as some of the factors that I want individuals to look at before making a decision. So GPA trends are something that we definitely look very closely at, even down to the minutia of how many credits did you take each term for that GPA trend, what was the type of course you took within that GPA trend, what was the rigor, what was the perceived ease. So believe it or not, we go so in depth in transcript review down to that minutia because that minutia gives us really good factual information to base our decisions on. Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Johnny, you have the last question, and then everyone else, please set up individual meetings with us. We're going to send the link. And also, if you live in the Bay Area, we're having an in-person event next week. Divian will be sending out a reminder email for the link to RSVP for our in-person event here on campus next week. And please, Marjani, ask your question.
Hi, everyone. So I started looking into the school because of the JD Flex program, but as I started my application, it offers me to write statements of interest for public interest scholars program and for environmental law scholars program. So are those two programs just for the daytime students, or what is the difference between those programs and the JD Flex Social Justice and Public Interest Law Fellowship?
Sorry, I was gonna have Vivian answer, but I think I might answer because it's technically a scholarships question. Okay, so the Flex program actually has 3 different tracks that you can choose once you become a student. And one is just the JD program track, because you're like, I'm not sure what kind of law I want to practice. There is one for social justice, and then another for intellectual property and data privacy. Those 2 fellowships are really specific because they usually require students to have had significant work, not interest, significant work experience in those areas to apply for the fellowship. We gave away a fellowship 2 years ago, but we did not give away a one last year because there wasn't any. I mean, there were wonderful applicants and matriculants to the school and they have great experiences, but specifically for the social justice or the IP one, there wasn't anyone quite yet that the individual committees selected for that. For the PISP, which is a public interest scholars and the environmental law scholars program, those are smaller scholarships and opportunities for students in the day program who do have interest, and it doesn't have to be as significant as the fellowship. So those are opportunities split between the day and the evening. So that's smaller. You do require yourself to provide an essay. Whether or not you are awarded the PISP doesn't really negatively, like if you're gonna get into the day program and get a free scholarship, there's not an additional amount of money you can get on top of that. We can't give you more than the tuition. So you would get it in name only, but the opportunities you have don't differ. If you don't get into PISP, for example, you still could participate in the public interest here at GGU. So really just depends on the number of applicants that we have every year. So you can, again, it is split between day and flex.
And so the programs are just money. It's not like extra classes that are geared around environment or policy, or
yeah, I mean, you get it's money, but and it's also experiential components because we have our urban and environmental law center, we have the women's employment rights clinic, we have our immigration clinic, we have our tax clinic, we have like a bunch of different public interest or environmental components. So yes, you are, and you get to participate in those, but part of the change that has occurred at Golden Gate over the last year or two is that we've sort of changed some of the structure. So we've opened up the doors for students to participate in more than what they just were admitted to environmental law, for example. Almost everyone can have an opportunity because they didn't know about it before they were coming in. So it's not just the money. It's the experiential component as well and the clinical experience. Thanks for your question. Everybody, this was amazing. You all had the greatest questions. We really appreciated getting to know all of you. And thank you for your, your candidness, your openness, your willingness to hear and learn more. We really wish you the very best of luck on your law school journey. Again, the contact information is on your screen and also in your chat, lawadmissions@ggu.edu. So welcome, congratulations on your journey so far, and we hope to see you in the future.